So guys, welcome to another session for cracking product interviews. This is the engineers edition, whereby we're going to figure out how an engineer approaches a product management interview and how the interviewer navigates the interview process, the questions and the works. Whether you're a fresher or you come with some amount of years of experience, the idea is to approach the interview as a conversation, and who better than Anirban Das, Senior Director of Product at Ola Electric, someone who's been there, done that, built out some amazing products, is one of the most top-rated instructors at NextLeap's Product Manager Fellowship. And more importantly, he runs this Sunday series with all of us called Cracking Product Interviews. Till now, we've done a bunch of interviews on a fresher breaking into a product management role, someone from a digital marketing background, and today we have the engineers edition. And typically what happens in these interviews, it's a good 40-minute long interview with a bunch of questions, volley of questions, very conversational, exactly how it would take place in an interview. Today in the hot seat, we have Kamal with us. Kamal is IIT pass out, currently working with Land Rover as a software engineer, but more importantly, he's also a NextLeap top fellow, and that's why he's going to be in the hot seat. He doesn't know what's coming his way. This is not at all scripted at all. This is on the go. Only Anirban knows what's coming everybody's way for today's session. So we have Kamal on the hot seat. Let's get him in the house and let's get rolling. But just one little clarification out here. This is an absolutely mock interview process. There is no representation of any organization that is being done out here. More importantly, no formal offers will be rolled out at the end or on the basis of this particular session. So if you're ready to go, Kamal, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. So let's have you here. And
Awesome.
on that note, I'm going to skip myself from the screen. Over to you guys. Have a good morning.
Hey Kamal, let's start off with maybe a quick 60-second introduction so that everyone gets to know you better.
Sure. So, hey everyone, I'm Kamal, currently a software engineer at Jaguar Land River, working in the ADAS team, which is for autopilot driving in Jaguar cars, building certain features end to end. I did my BTech from IIT last year. My interest in product management has been from college only, as in my final year, I also did a 6-month PM internship in Front Row. There I worked for the community section of their app and increased the day 7 retention rate for that section by 40%. Before that, in my 3rd year, I was heading Inactus IIT Roper, which is an entrepreneurship society. There I developed leadership and stakeholder management skills. And under my leadership, made to the national competition twice. Recently, as you guys know, that I took up a PM course at NextLeap and became one of the top performing PM fellows there amongst the 300 students who enrolled. And yeah, lastly, I would say I just love identifying customer problems and solving them. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this interview.
Awesome. So let's start off with your engineering. What was your favorite subject during electrical engineering?
I would say no one in electrical engineering.
Not a single subject?
Not a single. I didn't have interest in electrical engineering, to be honest. And that's why right from my first year, I was clear that I just have to pass exams in electrical. And because I was more inclined towards software and all this digital stuff. So, and the electrical subjects taught in IIT was very outdated. The course curriculum was also not very interesting. So not me, half, or I would say 80% of the class was not interested in the subjects. But still, if you want me to like pick one for the sake of it, then I would say hardly I remember subject names as well, but which one should it is?
Okay, let's skip the subject. Let's talk about 2 concepts that you remember. If you had to explain those concepts to like a 10-year-old, how would you explain those concepts? So any 2 concepts that you learned during your engineering.
Got it. Sure. So I can explain basically first one being about the transformers, and second one can be about maybe diodes. So
okay, transformers and diodes, go ahead.
So to a 10-year-old, I'm talking, if I am talking. So transformer, I would say, first of all, the main purpose of a transformer is that it has to provide electricity, because when electricity gets cut off from the lines, from the main source, then we need an alternate source, and that is a transformer. No, that's a generator, sorry. Let me reiterate. So basically, transformer is the main device which is very crucial for the electricity that comes in our homes. It basically steps down the current that is there. So basically, what happens is at the source there is so much of electricity developing, but in our house we need just a chunk of it. So to divide this whole energy, we need a device. Not we need, there's a device that does this. So that's called a transformer. It will basically step down this whole power to, let's say, to the adequate amount that our individual house requires. So that's the main purpose of a transformer, and you will see transformer everywhere because every household requires just a chunk of it.
And how does a transformer step down the power?
Basically, there's a concept. I forgot the name. I remember the equation. The number of coils in the transformer multiplied by the current it is getting is equal to the number of coils on this. Basically, there are two coils, and based on the number of rounds in those coils, it makes the ratio. And if the based on what ratio do we require for the electricity, that same ratio is with the same ratio this coils are developed. So basically, that's how it steps down. There is a law which says that the energy current is always conserved. So we'll create more number of coils so that we can get less electricity on this side, so that to match the electric energy. That's how it steps it down.
Okay, and diodes?
So in diodes, I would say, there are a lot of electrical devices around us, electrical appliances around us, and the electricity that goes in, let's say, we have a LED bulb in our home. So that LED bulb requires very minute, very less electricity, first of all, from the switchboard. Second one, that there are a lot of fluctuations that happen as well in the current. So to preserve that LED, there is a device called diode that comes in picture. And with that diode, you can have a lot of functionality, as in you can make the current pass in just one direction. You can make it pass in both the directions. You can stop a current. So these are the functionalities that it has, and it helps us save a lot of devices. Yeah, I think maybe I am going in the right direction because it's been 4 years since I studied that. But yeah, hardly this is what I remember on a broader picture. Maybe I might be wrong in somewhere. Please pardon me for that.
So you mentioned that the diode can make the current pass in one direction or stop the current, right? Or rather change the direction of current or stop the current.
Yes.
But how does the diode do that?
It's a terminal. Like there's a positive, negative. How does it does that is, I remember there is an anode, there is a cathode. Positive, negative.
Okay, it's fine. I think
Yeah.
you may not. Let's talk about the applications of transformers or diodes though. You mentioned one where it's used in LED bulbs. Can you talk about like any other products that actually use the two concepts you spoke about, transformers and diodes?
Other applications for these two can be found in, like, LED is just one example, but there are a lot of semiconductors these days, like in our laptops as well. There will be a lot of semiconductors, and there are chips which require electric current. So to provide electric current to those chips, I think diodes are used.
Okay.
Apart from it, application of diodes come in picture wherever we require a unidirectional current, and that can be at a lot of places. In Our voice.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Let's move on to the next question.
Sure.
So since you work in JLR, you would be aware that a lot of modern vehicles have a modem, and that modem has multiple antennas to connect to, for example, GPS or the internet via LTE or Bluetooth or several other antennas, right? If you had to think of a way or an experiment to measure interference between different antennas, how would you devise an experiment to measure interference between two antennas?
Okay. Interference between two antennas.
You can assume any type of antenna, but let's say you've got two antennas close to each other. How would you measure interference between them?
So firstly, can you just revise me the basically goal of this interference, just to communicate, right?
Yeah. So on the receiver side, you would have receivers for these two antennas, and then you use those receivers for like in higher levels of the software and the application. So if the nature of interference is known, then you can factor that in and have like a better customer experience. So that's why it is important to find out what the nature and pattern of interference is.
Got it. Basically, we can communicate through waves, the basically different frequencies at which these two can connect. And well, this is quite a domain specific thing which I am not very, I've worked on mostly softwares and development side.
Okay.
So I
just
believe
think
I will
about what you know about antennas and then try and apply yourself maybe for another minute. Otherwise, we'll move on.
Got it. Antennas will catch different frequencies, and based on those frequencies, certain thing will trigger in them, and then the further things will happen.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. You've mentioned that during your college days in Enactus, you came up with a stubble burning idea.
Yes.
So if you could just in 60 seconds talk about what problem you were solving, how you came up with the idea, and
Sure.
the entire
So basically, I believe everyone here must have heard about stubble burning problem, which creates a lot of pollution. So moving on to that, so we identified this problem as in this is a very large scale problem, and if we are able to solve some part of it even, then it will be a very, very big impact thing. So what we did was, firstly, coincidentally, there was a professor in our college who made the cheapest stubble cutting machine in our college. So that came in the news as well. He has patented that as well. So we collaborated with him that your machine we can use to cut, but what to do with that cutted stubble and how it will reach to the masses. Like everyone still cannot afford, every farmer still cannot afford that stubble burning machine. So we are talking about farmers here. And most of the farmers are very, I would say, low in the income. So what we ideate, the problem was that we have to solve the stubble burning problem, as in we want to prevent farmers to burn the stubble. So the solution was to cut the stubble, but cutting stubble was not very affordable for a farmer. Now this machine costed 2 to 3 lakhs, which is still the cheapest in India, but still not affordable to a lot of farmers. So we came up with an idea that in every village, we can have 2 to 3 machines of these 2 to 3 machines, and a farmer can, through an app, can basically book the session with this machine for a meager 500 rupees, and that machine can come and cut that stubble. That was one part of the solution. Second was what to do with that stubble that has been cutted. So we came up with a technique called manure making through that stubble. So that stubble can be used to make a manure in that farm itself, and that manure then can be used by the farmer for his crops. So that technique also we experimented. We in our own college we dig a hole, and through the process we tried to create manure out of the cutted stubble, and we were successful in making the manure as well. So this two-step solution, first was basically through an app, farmers will be able to book a session through that machine for a meager 500 rupees to cut that stubble. Now to use that cutted stubble, we can dig a manure and dig a hole and create manure out of it. So these two solutions were then we took as an experiment to the nearby farmers of our campus, because our campus was in Punjab. So we experimented with it, and yeah, you were asking something?
No, not me.
Okay.
I think someone else.
So basically, then we were successfully able to create an app for this, which was very farmer friendly in Hindi and very simple interface. That was done. Second thing done was this manure making process was finalized, and we were able to educate farmers on how to use this stubble to make manure. And lastly, we were able to have 2 to 3 sessions where on a demo basis we were able to like book the session through an app. Then we took the machine ourselves and cutted that stubble, and then use that stubble to create manure. So this was the pilot project that we did. It came in the news as well. So yeah, this is what we were able to do in my 1 year of me being there. Then the COVID thing happened and things got halted. So yeah, we were able to solve this much that I have just told.
Okay, so I think I can visualize how the app looked. Let's talk about the manure making process. So what ingredients and steps were involved in converting stubble to manure?
Got it. So there should be a 3 feet deep pit that should be digged. And then there are 5 layers, basically consisting mostly of water, stubble, and khad that we say that is used in plants basically. So firstly stubble will go, then water will go, then the khad that we say, I don't know the English word of it, that will go, then again water will go, and lastly it was basically I would say the covering, like lastly we have sent the water, so it should be covered properly and airtight. Airtight as in matlab air can be there, but it should not be left open basically, and it should be left there for 15 days, 15 to 20 days, and then the whole thing will convert to a manure which you can directly put in the crops seeds to make them grow and nourish.
So what happens in those 15 days? So you've put these 3 ingredients together, you've made it, you've closed the container.
Yeah.
What happens in those 15 days which actually converts those
So
ingredients?
basically there is a decomposition that takes place. I like what I remember, there's a decomposition that takes place, and yeah, that's what happens. And I believe, yes, it is enough. You can also search it on the internet as well. It's very simple process, but due to lack of awareness, not a lot of people know it.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about your work at JLR. You mentioned that you worked on an ADAS product.
Yes.
Start off, maybe you could explain to our audience what ADAS is all about in 30 seconds.
Sure. So ADAS basically stands for Advanced Driving Assistance System. In layman terms, I would say it's autopilot driving in cars. So basically, if you want, like, if you have heard of Tesla cars, there's a lot of buzz around it, and basically people are not putting their hands on steering, or even if they're putting their hands just on steering, they are not driving actually, the car is driving automatically. That's what ADAS means in a nutshell. Now coming to the technical part of it on how we are building it, what I am doing. So basically, I am the part of the VAL team, which is the core team of this ADAS product that we are building for JLR cars across the globe. And this VAL is basically a software which sits between the hardwares that we use, the hardwares of NVIDIA that we'll be using, and the driver, HMI screen basically. So now in this VAL layer, vehicle abstraction layer is the full form of VAL. So in this layer, we'll be having a lot of features that drivers will be using, like lane change, lane assist, or automatic cruise control, etc. So these will be a lot of features that we are building one-to-one. And firstly, like I would say, first half of my work at JLR, it's been 1.5 years. So around 6 to 8 months, the time spent in setting up this complete infrastructure, I would say, to build these features. Now we have recently made the ACC feature very like completely working, and now we are on to the next feature. Now coming to exactly what I do. So I have built certain tools or modules, I can say, which helps these features run successfully. So one of them is a settings history module. So basically I can talk about it.
Sorry to interrupt you. I think I asked you to explain what ADAS
Yes,
is.
yes, yes. I was coming to that only. Like, yeah.
We'll come to those things. So let's talk the settings history module that you spoke about. What customer problem were you trying to solve there?
So basically, customer faces the problem that when you want the car to go into ADAS, there can be times when you will be putting a lot of setting inputs because we require some setting inputs for certain features. But let's say the user is having 3 to 4 important settings that his favorite settings, we can say. But we don't want the basically user to, not we don't, I would say the user is having a lot of pain in putting those settings again and again. Every time he switch on his car, he has to click at least 6-7 times on the screen, and then his car starts. So this is a problem that every time the user has to click a lot of places to put the same settings that he has put earlier. So that's a I would say a pain point for a customer. So to solve this, basically we made the setting history module.
Which are the 6-7? So sorry to interrupt. Which are the 6-7, like just for me to understand this? You mentioned that previously user had to change 6 or 7 settings every time they had to turn off
input, not change input, 6-7 settings.
Input 6-7 settings. Which are the 6-7 settings or the 6-7 steps that user had to take?
Sure. So basically, let's say you want to switch the ACC feature on. So you will turn it on. That's one thing. Now, let's say ACC has certain inputs that it requires from the user. Like, let's say headway speed, the distance it has to the minimum distance it has to maintain, after how much time it should stop, and basically, nits and bits of some settings. I would say, like, there can be speed, distance are the main 2 factors, but apart from it, the lane change, time duration, etc. There are a lot of settings that are there. So let's say user is having a favorite setting of, let's say he wants the car on 60 km/h mostly on as an average speed. The user wants to keep a distance of at least 10 meters or 5 meters from the front car. So every time user is putting these settings like 65, then let's say lane change on, off, etc., etc. Let's say 4 or 5 settings are there that user is putting again and again every time he's driving and switching the car into that feature. So this is the pain point. So we would just save this whole configuration at once, and user can just reload it that this was your history. You can reuse any of your history of settings before.
Oh, so earlier you did not remember what user used to say?
No.
Used to reset to default.
Yes.
That sounds like a very...
We were not maintaining a database, I would say, of settings. That's why, like...
And why was it that way previously? Like, why were you not saving settings previously? Like, was it always part of the plan to save settings, just that you did not implement it, or like just trying to understand?
I would say, as I said, the team was new. In 6 to 8 months went in setting up infrastructure. So this is a basic functionality that I developed, although it was in pipeline and then I developed it. So it's not that it was not in the pipeline or it was in the pipeline earlier and then I came up with this idea. It was in the pipeline and I just developed it.
Got it. Okay. You mentioned that, okay, I get why clicks came down 6x. Can you please describe, you mentioned that, when working on this project, you use several agile methods. Can you talk about 1 or 2 methods and how they were successful, like how you found them useful in order to drive project success?
Sure. So nowadays, although like maximum companies use this methodology, So there is a sprint thing that goes in. There is a 14-day sprint in which the goals are defined for every employee or every team member, and the goals as in the tasks and the scope of the work and what do they expect at the end of the sprint in this 14 days. So there's a person called Scrum Master, or I would say a person who basically manages these tasks on who's doing what and how much time he's taking, and if he's facing any blocker in those tasks, what should be the point of contact for the person to get his things unblocked. So yeah, there was a sprint thing, 14-day task will be allocated. You will be free to do those tasks in whatever way you want. Just at the end of the sprint, the expectation is you have to complete it. Uh, and there's a scope defined that this is what needs to be done. At the end of the sprint, you will be assessed as in what things were left. And there is a backlog thing that what all tasks were left in the sprint will be pushed to backlog that will be taken up in the next sprint, as well as there will be a retrospective session wherein we'll see what we did good in this sprint and what we did not, what we can improve, and the next sprint will take that feedback and we'll improve in the next sprint based on that feedback. So this is how this main structure goes, and we worked in this structure only, and I believe this is a very good structure because it gives you freedom to work in whatever way you want. You just know that this has to be completed in this many days. Now you don't have, like, you can work 9 to 5 or 10 to 6, that's up to you. Although you have to give daily updates, that's a very crucial thing, so not skipping that. And in the sprint thing, I would say everyone knows what people are doing, and everyone knows what backlogs are being pushed, and how a person is performing. Plus, your performance is tracked very efficiently in this. Like, you are not a person whose tasks are getting in backlog, then you are a very good performer. And lastly, you get to pick. So at the start of the sprint, like in our organization, they used to ask these are the tasks that we have for this sprint. Then you can pick whatever interests you. Now these tasks were designed by the senior architects. Those architects were there in the sprint for the support, and they also used to pick some certain tasks. So this is how the execution thing was happening. Now the planning and roadmap was also a part of this sprint only, like what next we are doing. That also was a kind of task, that what is the future. So yeah, this was the agile thing that we used.
Okay. Let's talk about your other project at JLR, the JSR or JLR NDAS mapper. So what problem were you trying to solve using that?
Sure. So it's a technical problem. Basically, the hardware that we use is of NVIDIA, and NVIDIA has not designed its hardware for JLR cars only. It has designed for all the customers that it might have. So it has a certain language in which it is designed. Whereas in JLR, we have our own language, as in the settings that we have is different from Mercedes or any other company. So that language is, I would say, JLR settings or JLR feature specific settings, which JLR has created. So that is one language. NVIDIA's language is different. So these two have to interact so as to this complete flow to work. So basically, I developed a tool wherein we can map this JLR settings to NVIDIA settings, as in, let's say the user set the feature of ACC, and the setting was of this. Now, how it will work is NVIDIA has provided a list of modules, like longitudinal, lateral, active safety, etc., etc. These are the modules, and they have their own parameters in different languages. So these ACC feature will be broken down to our language, and then those parameters will be mapped to NVIDIA's parameters, so that the NVIDIA hardware knows key, this is what I have to run in the hardware. So this tool is doing basically this thing only, that we are trying to solve this problem of mapping, which is very crucial for the hardware to work in the car.
So who are the users for this tool?
So the tool is used by OEMs basically.
No, not OEMs, like within OEMs, who uses them? Is it like developers? Is it like testing team members? Is it product managers? Is it business folks?
So currently it has been not defined very properly, I would say. Currently we are just mapping it for our team. That's one. So developers is yes. Second would be the people who would be the hardware, the electronics team people, the electrical team people, because they'll be interacting with the hardwares. So they'll be using this tool. And lastly, I would say the ADAS, like developers only, the higher hierarchy of us who will be designing, who will be basically finalizing that which settings or which features are we rolling out. And based on that, the mapping will be done. So yeah, developers and the sister teams are the main users. Yes.
Last question about this tool. Because now you've sort of made it easy to actually change settings and interact with the hardware. It is also possible that you could introduce mistakes. If someone makes a mistake, right, by inputting a certain parameter or a configuration, there could be mistakes.
Yes.
So how would you go ahead and build something to handle misconfiguration or mistakes? Like any number of ideas that you have.
Good question. So here, what we did was that I'll have this feature, and based on this feature, I can map these things. So if a mistake goes in, so for that we can run a cross check. That's one solution, and that in that cross check we'll have a basically default mapping file that these settings ke liye sirf we can map only these three things. If any other thing apart from these is mapped, then we'll throw an error. You have mapped very wrongly, so go back. That recheck can be done, and that default file from which it will take place is quite important on how we build it. So that can be built as in basically we can avoid blunders, and that can be counted in that default file. Rest small mistakes, I think down the pipeline we'll get to know that it is not harming us, but it is wrong. So we can just go back and remap. But to avoid blunders, we can use that default file that we create and to recheck.
Got it. Let's move on to the next part. So you need to take a couple of minutes and share screen and walk everyone through the Discord case study that you did. Then I'll start with my questions.
Got it. Sure, I will do that.
Are you able to share screen?
Yes, just to give me a minute. Share screen is host disable participant screen sharing. So NextLeap team, I would request you.
Kamal, you've been given the co-host access. You can share your screen now.
Okay, now it is there. I hope my screen is visible.
Not yet, but I think now it's visible. So 2 minutes, just walk everyone through the problem you were trying to solve and how you came up with the solution.
Sure. So everyone knows about Discord, I assume here. Next, moving forward, if anyone doesn't, so Discord is a voice, video, text app that helps friends and communities come together to hang out and explore their interests. So that's the main USP. And the competitors are Telegram, Slack, etc. But Discord is more oriented towards gaming because it started as a gaming communication platform. So they have not diverged from that a lot. So now, firstly, I took the major user personas, as in who are the major users, or I would say the very frequent users, or I would say the main valuable users for Discord. So one is a working professional, one is a student. Professional uses to play its games and to connect with fellow friends. He's my brother actually, who uses Discord daily, and he's my friend of mine who uses Discord for educational purposes. And both of them use Discord like very regularly. So the goal given by NextLeap was to increase monthly active users of Discord. So now taking up this goal, firstly, I did my research whether does it make business sense or not. So yes, it did, because my hypothesis said that we may infer that the growth of last few years was majorly from gamers, which is saturating, and hence it's time to focus on non-gaming users and make them love Discord. And as per my research, I got coincident numbers from the data. Now, MAU refers to the number of unique users who interacted with the product service of a company within a month. So there are certain ways to increase it. So we have to pick a way. So there are certain ways, as in increase retention rate, like we bring back a user has already interacted, or we bring totally new users. So I would focus on increasing the retention rate, because as a product guy, I'll have more ownership in this and less of a dependency on the marketing aspect of things. So I focused on the first step. Now I did a survey to basically identify a particular user so that I can identify a particular problem of that user which we can solve. So I did a survey, and based on my survey, I would like to focus on the users who use Discord rarely. 62% people said that they use Discord rarely. I had certain options, and rarely was the most selected option from there. And I had certain I had certain activities as well, like why do you use Discord? So 40% said that they joined some community in that Discord. So since the number of the responses are highest for the above segment, and I believe that bringing inactive users would be fruitful. So let's go forward from here. So how it will increase MAU is like to increase the usage of the pick target user segment. We try to convert them from, since they use rarely now, we'll try to convert this rarely to frequently. And if they use frequently, then we'll increase retention and thereby increasing the MAU. Now, how to make them use frequently? So let's try to understand the problems, as in why they are not using frequently now. And based on those problems, we'll try to get some solutions to make them use frequently, make them use Discord frequently. So I had like based on my primary research, as in calling users, I got certain insights or problems, I would say. Then I listed them in my survey as well. And then I got the number of responses which are in front of you, and severity of pain is like based on my own hypothesis, but this can also be validated with data. Then I did a score to pick a problem, like user was clear who use rarely and join certain communities. Now which problem do these users might have? So these are the problems, and this is the problem that we'll try to solve for this user. So at the end of this slide, I would say we have picked a particular user whose problem is also identified, which we'll try to solve. So problem picked is he cannot find servers of interest to engage in. This step is very important. Solutioning is fine, but picking the right user, picking the right problem is very important. So that's why I did a lot of this and this survey and all. In real life scenario, I'll have a lot of channels like CleverTab, etc., to measure the data and to validate the user and the problem.
Okay.
Then I basically did some solution.
Sorry,
Yes.
I think in the interest of time, I'll quickly jump into a few questions that I have about your case study.
Sure.
So your personalized recommendation of servers, if you go to the next slide, you've got a bunch of different categories, right?
Yes.
Which are showing up for the user. How would you decide which are the categories to show and in what order?
Good question. So basically, firstly, I'll see what are the type of servers that are existing in Discord right now. Then I'll categorize them by myself. And let's say I find out that science servers are the second most, like in terms of numbers, science servers are the second in the ranking. First is gaming servers, second is science servers, third is, let's say, entertainment servers. This is what I did on my own as a Discord company. And then based on the number of servers that I have, I'll give preference to those servers because they are already existing.
Okay.
So based on the existing servers, I'll give them the priority. Then the new like psychology servers, ke 2-3 servers hi agar sirf, then I'll keep them on the low priority because I don't have servers.
Okay, understood. Now that's a good way to classify and group and order these at the first level. Now let's say users from India and users from USA behave differently.
Yes.
Or iPhone users and Android users behave differently. How would you factor that in?
So that will be, again, there will be a categorization. Since we are making it very personalized, so we'll have the data of iPhone, Android. And if Android users are there, I'll see Android iPhone I won't be categorizing because in the user persona, there is no difference. I believe very large difference. Whereas second category you said was US and India. That there is a very large difference. So there I would like to have categorization very differently, because user personas are very, very different. So they'll have their own requirements. So this categorization that I talked about initially, I'll do that for USA separately. For India, I'll do that separately. And जो US के results आएंगे, I'll show that to US users. And जो India के communities के results आएंगे, I'll show that to Indian users. Like let's say in India we have religious communities like on Discord, let's say. So that will be shown on the top. Whereas in US, let's say we have a lot of NBA communities. So that will show on the top to the US people.
Okay. So this is the solution that you have is one solution to solve the problem of discovery of servers. Can you brainstorm or can you think of like 2 or 3 other solutions to the same problem?
Okay. Discovery of solutions.
No. This personalized recommendation of servers is one solution to solve the problem of discovery of what server to join, right?
Yes.
Can you think of more solutions to the same problem?
Apart from these 3, right?
Yes, apart from these 3.
So there can be minute solutions as well. Like I wonder they'll have a lot of impact, but to say, we can have a feed section that is listed. Recommendation कर देंगे. See servers joined by friends. वो भी हम कर रहे हैं. What else in we nudge users to create Discord servers.
Okay, let's move on. Now, if you go down a couple of slides, so this is one like UI sketch that you've put together, and just come down. I think there's a web version as well for the landing page, right? Yeah. So this is the web. Now, if you had to ensure that your feature minimizes development effort across, web and mobile platforms, mobile includes mobile web as well as both the apps for Discord, then how would you change your feature to ensure that goal is achieved of minimum changes?
Got it. So since we have existing servers, we are just trying to show those servers based on users' interest. So firstly, we should know what servers to show. So for that, we need to categorize servers and see how servers perform. So we can basically to every server just introduce a tag. Let's say that this is this category server. Basically hashtags we can say to categorize servers easily. That is one. Second can be we just need to curate based on the hashtags now the servers in groups. Like let's say I want trending servers right now. So I'll have the interaction in a server which is very the interaction has been shot up a lot. And if we identify that as a trending server, then we can just pick its hashtag and curate those kind of servers as trending. Latest again is a category which we can just pick with the date the server has been created and also a number of interactions. Unique is something which we need to do some work to identify ourselves, let's say. Then your favorite is just you basically development side हमें सिर्फ servers how a server looks like ना उसमें we'll have to add some fields like field or the tag field and the interaction score field, maybe the some fields ताकि पता लग जाए how this server is performing, how this server is doing in the market, etc., etc. And then we can just categorize these kind of servers into various things that I have shown. And on the user side, we'll just take the interests, and based on those interests, we'll map the hashtags, and based on those mapping, we'll show them. That is the basic way to do it. Then we can apply a machine learning model to just update this recommendation.
Okay.
For these hashtags, yes.
Last question. You mentioned that if you go to your risks section at the end, you mentioned that if a user opens a recommended server but does not join, one of the possible fixes could be onboarding flow. But could you come up with 2 or 3 reasons or hypotheses as to why a user would open a server but not join?
Sure. So there can be a couple of reasons why a user opens a recommended server but doesn't join. One can be the server is not of interest. Maybe our recommendation went wrong. Second can be the user's goal, or the user was not expecting to join at all. He was just there to check the server and see how much people are there, etc. Some information of that server. Third can be the user was told by someone to just, that comes again in checking the server. So first can be lack of like not interested, and if interested but does not want to join because, let's say, doesn't see a lot of interaction in that server or something. Maybe some reason can be there that needs to dive deep, as in what can be the reasons that interest hai lekin tab bhi join nahi kar rahe. Third can be interest is there, want to join as well, but still not joining because they can be either shy to join a server, or they can like feel as in, like very, very shy as in to interact with people. And like, or the fourth, like, or you can say they have already joined some servers and they think that they are not useful. So why to join one more server? There are a lot of servers that I have joined and they are not providing any value to me. So maybe this doesn't, I don't see any value in joining this server.
Okay.
So yeah, these can like bad experience previously in servers. So maybe, yeah, these are some couple of reasons I believe a user won't join a server.
Got it. Okay. Thanks, Kamal. I think I'll quickly get started with the feedback. So some of this may sound a little bit harsh, but the intent is to help you,
Yes, totally. I really want to improve. Just go with it. Yeah.
Okay, so let's start off with, clearly you did not enjoy electrical engineering. However, Kamal, even if that's the case, in an interview, you cannot diss your college or your course. And see, the questions also, if you look at them, right, it was completely within your control. So
Yeah.
favorite subject, 2 concepts that you liked, right? If you studied 100 things and you dislike 90 of them, there'll be at least 2 which you dislike the least, right? So you can always go ahead and pick those and not give such a negative spin or during your interview. So this is something you need to definitely keep.
Sure.
Coming to the transformer and diode questions, I think you should have spoken about the basic operating principle without prompting. So first you spoke about, like you said, the main purpose of the diode or the application of the transformer, is to provide electricity, alternate source of electricity. You stumbled there slightly and then corrected yourself saying that generator and transformer, so that was fine. However, you avoided everything technical. I had to probe once before you could even go into, the coils and how the ratio between coils is used to step up or step down the transformer, right? So at this point, I also did not probe more because you were clearly uncomfortable. Like I could make out that you were uncomfortable. So that is why I think one of the things you need to do is, before you go ahead, and I think you took about 30 seconds and you immediately started to answer transformer and diodes. But I think before you go ahead and start answering in how these work or how you would explain it to your 10-year-old, you need to first think about whether you know those concepts absolutely confidently or not. I don't think, or you could have picked a simpler concept.
Got it.
Um,
Just wondering, an 80-year-old will understand the tech thing or not? I was just wondering.
that's exactly the reason why the question is framed in this way, right? If you can explain things in a way to make it relatable to a 80-year-old, then you would have done well. So in this, for example, for transformer and diodes, maybe using a like a remote controlled racing car example, right? Could have made it relatable to a 8-year-old, because that would definitely be used. Or in the case of transformers, right? Maybe you could have started with the last time when electricity went out and it came back again, there was probably a transformer involved. So those are the, like, I think the first level is to basically understand the concepts in a way that is extremely simple and you are confident about it. And then the next layer is, if you are able to explain it to a 20-year-old, then how do you make it more relatable to a 8-year-old? So those are the levels of the answer. But that's on this. Then which products use these concepts? So semiconductors was fine. You mentioned laptops and chips that need electric current. However, whenever we need unidirectional current, right? That's a very generic answer, because that's not a product. You're just like, you're taking what the device does and you're saying that, okay, these are all the products which could possibly find use for it. Then the interference between two antennas question, I think you gave up too soon. See, there are certain things that you definitely know about antenna, right? There's you mentioned frequency, I think, at one point, right? So there's a transmitter, there's a receiver. Itna pata hoga aapko. Then you know that there are waves which have a wavelength and frequency. This also, you know. If they are operating in the same wavelength and frequency, it is possible that interference ho sakta. Right? This much also, you know. So you could take these three things and at least take a couple of minutes to apply, like, what will the experiment be, right? You can change the distance between the two antennas. That could be one thing. It could be to introduce like a receiver on the other end that you're measuring from, right? That these would be characteristics which are common to any experiment. So saying that this is a domain specific thing and you have worked only on the software related side and you are an electrical engineer, right? It's very, very defensive.
Got it.
So at least that try needs to be there. Okay. The stubble burning idea, I think you could have summarized this better. So I asked you to summarize it in 60 seconds, but I think you went on for about 180 seconds. So some parts which you could have possibly left out is like COVID happened, you had to stop. Most farmers are on low income, right? These things really do not add too much value to the question, which is your idea. And this is one of the things I think overall you need to listen more to the question. And in case something is not clear, ask a clarifying question, because right now what is happening in this question, and we'll see later on in a few other questions as well, you're selectively picking key phrases from the question, and then you're talking about everything related to those key phrases during your answer. I'll show you another example up ahead as well, right? Ingredients and steps involved in manure making. I think you spoke about high level what the steps were, but then decomposition taking place, and then you can search on the internet as well, right? The depth of what the decomposition reaction is, what bacteria, what microbes get involved, what are the chemical reactions, and how the conversion of the materials you put in happen to the material that you take out, right? Those did not come out at all. And I also did not probe, because at that point of time, the last point that you mentioned indicated to me that you may actually not know about these. And this is, you need that depth, because on your LinkedIn profile, right, you've mentioned that this idea was your brainchild. And if this idea is your brainchild, you should know everything there is to know about this idea, right? So that is why for this one specifically, you need to know everything that can be known about the entire project or idea, right?
Got it.
Okay. GLR, again here, this is another example, right? So I asked you to explain to the audience what ADAS was in under 60 seconds. So you spoke about, I think you did this in 30 seconds. Then you started going into you being part of the core team in this layer, what features were there, infrastructure, and now building adaptive cruise control, right? This is
Yes,
too
yes,
much
yes.
detail.
Your screen froze, Anirban.
Let's just give him a few seconds. I think
Yeah,
he
sure, sure. He's
reconnect.
back. Yes.
So, sorry.
Folks, we are facing a bit of a network lag
worries,
here.
he'll be
Let's
back,
just
I
give
Well
us a few
explained.
seconds.
Sorry, did is my voice audible now?
Now
Yes,
it
it
is
is now
audible,
audible.
Anirban.
Okay. So I think the customer problem in the settings history module, you explained that very well and crisply. The 6-7 steps that customer needed to take, I think that was also done well. So that was a good one. Then why was this not happening previously? This also, I think you explained reasonably well. Now the agile methods one, again here, right? I think you picked agile and then spoke about everything about agile. Now, what you need to realize is that people who will be interviewing you will probably have more experience with agile, or it is likely that
Yes.
some of them could have. So then it's a repetitive thing for them. The point, the question was, please describe the agile method which led to project success. So the freedom to work where and when you want, everyone knows how people are doing and performance being tracked very efficiently in this, right? I think just saying this would have been a much more crisper answer
Got
to
it.
the agile process, because this is what you liked about agile. What problem you were trying to solve using JLR and DAS mapper? I think this was done fairly well. You explained exactly what the problem was pretty clearly. On the who were the users part, right? You mentioned that this is not defined properly yet. Now,
Yes.
in a PM interview, you don't want to say users are, and you have built this system, right? So how can you say that users were not defined properly yet? And then you actually, and that was also not true, because you mentioned that there would be developers and electrical team people and ADAS developers up the hierarchy who would tune these systems, right? So that means there are users. So you should not have started with this. You should have just said, okay, it's developers, electrical team members, and ADAS developers. Then there's how do you handle misconfiguration? This I think you answered well. Now let's come to Discord. Discord again, my question was, walk through the case study in 2 minutes. You took more than 5 minutes. So you need to be conscious somehow of time. How would you decide what categories in which order? This I think was answered well. The only thing that you could have done better is the Android iOS. You passed a judgment saying that there's no large difference in persona and hence you won't categorize. But if you look at the breadth of Android phones, right? You will have Android phones which are worth 5,000, but iPhone probably starts at 50,000.
1 lakh.
You
Yes.
passed a judgment, you did not explain why, and the judgment was wrong. So you need to be careful of when you're passing these sort of judgments, right? What will you change on the brainstorming of other solutions? It's fine. I think you had already come up with 3, so it's perfectly fine. So if you take some time to think about it and to not come up with something, that's fine. What will change in the future? Yes. So this again is an example of where you're not listening to the question. You're talking about things remotely related to the question. So the point was in the UI UX layer, how do you change something in the feature, or what do you keep in mind to make sure that client-sided development is common? And you spoke about existing servers should show the categories based or servers based on user interest. Got nothing to do with the client-side logic. Curate based on hashtag got nothing to do with the client-side logic. Rendering servers right now, latest category, got nothing to do with the client-side logic. So everything that you spoke about was in some ways how this feature would get implemented, but not a single UI aspect of it you spoke about. And that's why, everything that you spoke about were irrelevant to the question. Now, this question might have been slightly open-ended. You could have asked a clarifying question saying, what do you mean? But that's what I mean by the overall meta feedback of, listening better and asking clarifying questions.
Yeah,
Finally,
I assume
what
that
other...
UI has been fixed. UI is the one I'm showing. And now development kaise minimize karni. I went into that.
But I asked you के how do you ensure के minimize हो जाए client web और mobile के बीच में development?
So we can change UI as well. That I didn't consider.
Next, I think hypothesis for users and how to recommend a server. I think that you answered really well. Yeah, I think this one you answered well. So yeah, that's the overall feedback. Just to summarize, I think if there are two things that I would suggest that you spend your time on, is one on your engineering, including your projects, right? So everything that you've put in your CV and LinkedIn, spend some time to revise those certain concepts which you may have forgotten or were not aware of in your involvement in the project. Go deep into them, become an expert on those subjects. On the engineering side, don't look at everything engineering, but things that you've learned in your engineering, 2 or 3 things that, you know, if given a choice, you can speak about, as well as things which may be relevant to your job at JLR. So power electronics or MOSFETs, right, are very, very important, and you might have studied about them. Or interference might actually be a relevant concept because of connected cars, right? So anything that might be relevant to your job at JLR and engineering, that intersection, just spend time on it and get a good understanding of it, because you may be asked those questions in an interview. That's one. And second is, for any question, right, maybe it might make sense for you to write down what the question is. Take 30 seconds after every question, look at the question, consciously ask a clarifying question if you find anything which you don't understand and is ambiguous, and only then start answering the question. My suggestion would be to focus on these two things.
Got it.
But thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah,
it,
sure.
it takes courage to like do this in front of other people and also take feedback in the right spirit. So thank you so much.
Yes, I am taking it in right spirit, and I'll surely ponder over these points, and hopefully there won't be any red coloring thing in the Excel sheet if we meet again for an interview in future.
All right. On that note, thank you so much, Kamal. This was really, really much appreciated. And also the fact that, you know, you put yourself out there, let yourself be vulnerable and taking back this feedback. Folks, before you guys all sign out, and Anirban also gives you a few tips, I'm going to quickly run a poll because I would love some feedback from each and every one of you on how we can make these sessions even more valuable for you. So just tell us what you like. You see, there are only 3 questions. How did you find out about the session? What are you currently doing? And have you watched any of our previous sessions on YouTube channel? So just keep those, just let us know from where did you get to know. It helps us sort of, you know, come back to you with more offerings. And also in the chat, let us know, how do you think about this entire interview that took place? Would you have answered something a bit differently? And folks, while you guys are answering this, Anirban, any one tip that you want to sort of leave our audiences today with?
I guess anything that you put up on your LinkedIn or your profile or your resume, you want to be like the expert on it and have depth in those subjects, because that's the information which is shared with the interviewer, and it's likely that questions will come from those. So you absolutely want to go really, really deep into those topics.
All right. On that note, thank you so much, Kamal, and everybody else for joining in. We've overrun our time. If you have any questions, we will take one question in from the audiences. This is the moment to ask that question. Let us know in the chat if you have a question, folks. And thank you, Namrita, Anand, and Jayant, and Sachin for the great words. Feels good on a Sunday morning. Thank you so much. All right, looks like no questions, in which case, thank you so much for joining in, and we will see you next Sunday for another edition of Cracking Product Interviews with Anirban Das. Thank you so much, guys.